Hello everybody and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. And important announcement, we now have 3 support groups. We have an adult depression and anxiety group. This is done by teleconference, very inexpensive, both a member and a non-member price. We now have one for 15 to 20-year-olds, which starts very soon. Different set of problems. In fact, that's what I'm going to talk about today, is some of what's going on college campuses that's affecting this age group in high schools. And then we have a COVID-19 support group for adults who are dealing with specifically issues associated with COVID-19, job loss, financial problems, stress with family members and friends, and many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you're interested in those things, Pam Popper at msn.com. And we're going to be making announcements about a couple of speakers we're adding to our conference very soon, November 13th through 15th. We are having it here in live, in person, live, all of us in the same room, eating together. You might even get a hug if you'd like one. And we think it's very important to start getting people in the same room with each other. We have got to not let the new normal be separation from other humans. That is not a good thing. So, I'm going to tell you what's going on college campuses. I think parents should get their kids out of these places and bring them home and either do some kind of online study, find something else to do, wait till this nonsense is over, and then consider going back to the college or university. Here's something from the University of Alabama. This little montage here is a little bit of testimonials, what people are saying, students are saying, and then also in addition to testimonials, policies that the colleges have started. It's just heartbreaking. So, University of Alabama. I love this university, but if I knew when I was in high school that I'd be staying in my room all day, I would have never gone to any college. Tulane University, no gatherings over 15 people. Everyone's mental health is crumbling. Nobody is even sick, and those who quarantine follow the rules. School requires asymptomatic testing, and there's no end in sight. My guy and girlfriends are all miserable. So many have been like this is prison. We can't do anything. All bars closed in Louisiana. We gather at local parks and the cops come to shut it down. No fun ever allowed. No end in sight. University of Iowa. They have isolation dorms for COVID kids, but they're horrid. Guys in hazmat suits come. 2 weeks isolation, no visitors. Nurse on call, but up to 3-hour wait if you need something. Kids at school now are not getting tested, so they don't get sentenced to the isolation prisons. Middlebury College. Students had to sign a health pledge that they had no say in developing. All students are confined to dorm rooms until COVID test comes back negative. No one is allowed off campus at least until September 15. No visitors on campus all year. School has a Google form so that people can snitch on non-compliers. Town is terrified of students returning. This in a county in Vermont that has had 5 cases. The entire state, 55 deaths. They've canceled all fall athletic competitions. Students are back on campus, but most classes will be remote with, of course, a 3% tuition increase. Professors active on reopening committees, so it's not surprising that they're pro-lockdown. University of Tennessee. The first 2 weeks of the semester have been very different. At my university, I have to stay in my dorm. Since my college courses are all online, keep in mind, without any tuition deduction, my friends and I have not gotten to leave our dorm room to make friends. One way we socialize is to open up our dorm window and talk to people who are walking to their cars or back to their dorms. Another thing we have to do is take a daily COVID report. If we do not pass this test, we're not allowed to leave the dorm and we will not be allowed to go anywhere at school. As well as a daily COVID report, we can only enter and exit through specific doors. The university has cut off our keys to entering certain ways. For example, if we're walking back from the dining hall, we have to walk to the parking lot behind our dorm to enter our building. This can actually be very dangerous if we find ourselves in a situation that we need to enter through the front door and can't because that's locked. All of my classes are online. Even though they're online, I'm still required to stay on campus, pay for on-campus housing, and buy a meal plan. University of South Carolina. Roommates are terrified of making a mistake regarding masks, distancing, and gatherings. The president basically yells every day that this is not sustainable and threatening to shut it all down. Kids are just waiting for the hammer to drop. It's horrific. After 4 months of quarantine with no friends, she was desperate to go to campus, so we encouraged it. This is a parent talking. I'm sick with worry every day, not about the virus, about the mental anguish and social isolation they're forcing on our kids. This is criminal behavior. Vanderbilt University, no roommates, all online classes, no in-person activities, dining halls closed, libraries closed except under very strict guidance, no visiting another dorm room, 6 feet distance at all times, masks mandatory when not in dorm room, cannot leave the Nashville area, circles drawn on quad area, threats of suspension, expulsion for first offense, security guards posted throughout the campus to enforce rules, kids encouraged to snitch on non-compliers. After having been on campus for a week, my daughter has not met or spoken to a single person. She's in her dorm room in front of her computer at almost all times, and the only time she really leaves is when she picks up her to-go meals. This is very depressing. College in the University of Texas system. All but made it impossible for Baptist student ministries to meet. Their meeting rooms are on campus and have to be cleaned 4 times a day. People have to remain 6 feet apart, mandatory masks at all times, temperature checks as people arrive, and student ID cards have to be swiped for contact tracing. Student wants to fight back but feels helpless, not knowing who may be reporting her actions. Very, very Soviet-like. This is what we're doing to our adolescents. So ask yourself, does this sound right to you? Do you think that the people who are all for these lockdowns, or does this sound like the appropriate way to treat adolescents? Arizona State, we have one of the most ridiculous systems in the country. You're supposed to submit a daily health check on the ASU app, which consists of 2 questions. If you forget to do that, your college account is put on hold. I'm also a student worker, have to sit at a desk. There's no one around me for 6 feet, yet they make me wear a mask for 6 hours of my shift. They do the same for students who are in a lab working on using the computers. Even when there is no one around, you're supposed to wear a mask. I still don't know if they work, but wearing one for 6 hours is ridiculous. Here's a testimonial from Ohio State University. Interim suspensions if they break any of the rules, including attending, participating in on-campus or off-campus gatherings of more than 10. Last weekend, when we moved in our child off-campus housing, helicopters were buzzing over the houses. There were people basically roaming around and spying on kids to bust them, and we knew exactly what they were looking for. It's insane. Daily check-ins of health prior to being allowed off campus. If you think this generation has anxiety issues before, can you imagine what they have now? I get the common sense stuff, but I really wonder what country we're living on with all this surveillance. Here's another testimonial. In June, when housing deposits were due, they said in-person classes, no masks outside, no mention of tests. All positive and happy, and there'd be football. My daughter really wanted to go back to college. In the college environment, isolated at home was causing a lot of, not being in the college environment caused a lot of depression, so we let her go. 48 hours before the students move in, the week it was supposed to begin, OSU changed all the rules. It's a dystopian hell. Another college, every day I hear of some new restriction or rule that students are required to follow. Things have been even more significantly tightened during the first week of school. Perhaps the most obvious instance is the Housing Department's obsession with keeping students away from one another. Before the first week of school, Housing sent a decree saying that students were prohibited to have more than 1 guest in our apartments or dorm rooms at a time. This past Wednesday, 3 days after the beginning of the semester, a new email. We are forbidden to have any guests whatsoever. Over the summer, new security cameras have been installed in the hallways of all buildings aimed at residents' doors. Johns Hopkins, 6 weeks ago, hybrid. Everybody back but sophomores kicked out of dorms. Must rent a house off or off campus to make room for freshmen and singles. 3 weeks ago, reverse course. Campus closed, do not come back. Sorry you signed a binding legal lease. Many kids in apartment houses are going back. They are paying rent after all to remote learn. A couple of off-campus kids test positive. Hopkins sends threatening letter. No matter where you are, if you break Hopkins rules with masks, social distancing, and being with more than 10 people, you can be expelled. They encourage people to rat on each other and even set up a Facebook page for students to rat. Just dropped my son off, who's an athlete at Johns Hopkins. They shut down. Cowards. He lives off campus. His friends at Ohio State team may quit because it's prison. Other places as well. Louisiana State. Our son spent his first nights at college alone. No welcome dorm pizza party, no meeting the kids on his floor. He walked campus alone. You can't eat in the cafeteria. You take out food back to your room. Masks required everywhere. In Baton Rouge in August, outside. I don't know how the kids aren't fainting. All classes online, nothing in person. We get weekly emails advising us to support our kids getting a test and behaving so they don't have to close the campus. It's sick. What are we doing? Why? If LSU does close and send the kids home, we won't go back. Why pay out-of-state tuition for Zoom? Western Carolina University, mandatory masking inside and outside. Cafeterias are closed with takeout food and a long line. All these parents are on the hook for all the payments. They're not letting them out. You know, you can't get out of your lease if you rented an apartment and the school's closed. It's just unbelievable. Miami University ordered via an email to quarantine immediately so they could contact trace athletes. Ordered into an abandoned dorm immediately that wasn't intended to be occupied this year. No supervision or help with moving. No elevators, not clean communal bathrooms, which makes no sense. Didn't matter if you'd been to parties or around anybody who tested positive. Threatened with Class 2 misdemeanor by the sheriff and code of conduct violation, aka loss of scholarship if you went home. Most are now finally released. Campus is testing 3,000 students a week, and the general student population returns on 9/17. At any time, you can be forced back into quarantine. And then this is an interesting letter that I'll read to you. This is from Syracuse University. Dear students, last night a large group of first-year students selfishly jeopardized the very thing that so many of you claim to want from Syracuse, that is a chance at residential college experience. I say this because the students who gathered on the quad last night may have done damage enough to shut down campus, including residence halls and in-person learning, before the academic semester even begins. Make no mistake, there was not a single student who gathered on the quad last night who did not know and understand it was wrong to do so. Students gathering together, wrong to do so. These are college students, people. The number of college students who've died of COVID-19, even cases, is so minimal. These students knowingly ignored New York State public health law and the provisions of the Syracuse University Stay Safe Pledge. Even more selfish and upsetting is how the actions of these students willfully undercut the efforts of those who have worked tirelessly over the summer to set the conditions for the continuation of residential learning. Who would want to participate in residential learning in this way? I mean, who would want to do it? If you have kids in school, get them the heck out of there before something bad happens. A full investigation of last night's incident is underway. The Department of Public Safety is reviewing security camera video from the quad, and individuals that can be identified will be immediately referred to the student conduct process. All this said, I want you to understand right now very clearly that we have one shot to make this happen. The world is watching, and they expect you to fail. Prove them wrong. Be better. Be adults. Don't socialize with each other. What is that? Being better. Be adults. Stay away from each other. What kind of horse manure is this? Creighton University. 11 days to get the required COVID tests back. Isolated the whole time. No in-person eating at the dorms is a norm. Training in the heat with masks for hours. Masks 24/7 on campus inside and out. Social isolation. 2 classes a week in person, everything else virtual. Can't come home until the end of fall semester as you can't travel more than 100 miles from Omaha. Aren't allowed to go anywhere or do anything except local restaurant pickups and run to the store. If you're mildly exposed to a person with COVID, 14-day mandatory quarantine. Again, it goes on and on. My son is a freshman. All his classes are online. He chose to live on campus in order to experience a semblance of college life. In his giant dormitory, his room is only one with 3 guys. They have knocked on doors in their hall trying to meet people and have been chastised and hassled by the RAs for being radicals for simply reaching out to others. Knocking on doors to meet college students who you're going to school with, that's now verboten. The chow hall staff does not allow these roommates to sit together at the same table. Tables are a radius 6 feet apart. Every interaction is actively discouraged. The general school population is adhered to the solitary confinement model. Students keep their heads down, masks on, and avoid even saying hello. My son has said their fear is palpable. Colgate, same thing. He can't even go outside to speak on the phone in private. It's the equivalent of house arrest with a stranger, which would have been tolerable if things were allowed to open up. He can't even go outside to use the phone. Rice University, weekly COVID tests, can't eat in the dining room, given meals to take out, containers to be eaten in the dorm room. Masks required all the time. Athletes have to work out wearing masks. The coaches and trainers have to wear masks and face shields and gloves. Players can't use the locker room or team rooms this season. Crazy and sad. Purdue University. In February, I got him a car. Due to COVID, he had to come back home in March. He went back to school this month just to find out that the building management treated his car as abandoned and sold it at an auction. This happened to many international students around the country. The kid's private property. Wesleyan. My child's university is testing them twice per week, and they must quarantine for 2 full weeks on arrival, even if they test negative. They are not allowed visitors on campus. No one is allowed to leave. An asymptomatic positive test will result in isolation at a hotel the university rented. No contact with friends, family, or even known physicians. For what? So the university can profit and the students will learn to comply and become reliant, dependent. Kitchens are closed, they can't cook. No one's allowed to help them move in either. Single girls were literally trying to lug refrigerators across campus and up flights of stairs. Colorado State, my daughter was not even there 24 hours and was sent to quarantine because she might have come into contact with someone who was in contact with someone who tested positive for the virus. I'm not kidding. They made the students leave their rooms and move them into a room so they couldn't even bring their own bedding. The food they drop off is a frozen sandwich, orange, chips, and soda. They have to stay there for 14 days and won't even test them. They make the locks not work. They disable the key cards so that they can't go anywhere. Every single one of my classes is online. I'm socially isolated in my room because we don't have roommates. The loneliness and homesickness has affected me so much, and they don't have any counseling available. If they do, it's via Zoom, which isn't the same. My anxiety has gotten so bad I actually have to go home to see a specialist and just find someone I can talk to. It's really like a prison here, and so on. So this is college life in the era of COVID-19, where our government has been overthrown by criminals who think that it's appropriate for this to happen to adolescents. Just let this sink in, the pieces I just read to you. Who thinks that this is okay? I'm having a thought, about some of the people who are still speaking to us, who are sheeples, about just handing these documents to somebody and saying, why don't you read this and tell me what you think about this? Am I missing something? I'm thinking about doing that with a lot of these kinds of documents. Can you tell me where I'm thinking incorrectly? I think this is appalling. What do you think about it? Again, I just can't fathom people signing off on this, and it's hard for me to believe that the sheeples don't know anybody who's going through this kind of thing. Maybe they just congregate with each other, I don't know, but it's hard to imagine that they haven't encountered somebody who's got some kind of story like this, and yet they're saying, okay with me? I'll tell you what, this is not okay with me. It is not okay with me. So, that's it for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody you think might enjoy watching it and learning about this. My email address is pampopper@msn.com. WellnessForumHealth.com, MakeAmericans.FreeAgain.com. Participate in our conference calls. We are having like 150 people per conference call, very lively questions and answers, lots of good information. Participate. So all you have to do is send me an email. We'll get you signed right up. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with more news.